Washington's getting a shakeup on the coaching staff.
You are Locked On Huskies, your daily podcast on the Washington Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into another edition of the Locked On Huskies podcast. I'm Tomashoff. That's Lars Hanson. He's site editor with Athlon Sports' Inside the Huskies. I'm the site editor with Huskies Wire. Thank you for making this your first watch or first listen of the day, as we are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, because right now new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Lars got a really fun show coming at all day every day today, but just a quick reminder, make sure you subscribe wherever you get this podcast. That's YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music. We really do appreciate it. It really does help us out a lot. Leave a like, comment down below. If you're audio only, a 5-star review, all those things really do help us out. We've got so much fun stuff coming throughout the offseason, and that starts officially really right now. Got standouts from the Sun Bowl. There are a lot of guys that we were really impressed with, a lot of the younger guys. We're going to get into some of that. We're going to talk Jordan Shaw, who entered his name in the transfer portal not too long after we ended our recording on Wednesday, because that's just how this show works. But we got to start with the big news. Washington is getting a staff shakeup. Vinnie Sunseri, the safeties coach, is leaving for the defensive coordinator position at Jacksonville State. And Lars, you and I have gotten some flack on Twitter because we had some very different messages about this. And I said it. I said, hey, we're going to talk about this on the show. So let's just dive into it, because you have some great insight on this.
Yeah, so actually I might have kind of set you up to fail on this one, because I did tell you you kept journalistic integrity, I guess, if anything, because I told you off the record, I think, just because I hadn't put out the story yet, but I talked to CJ Christian on the record. So to be clear, I'm not speaking out of context here, divulging something that he didn't say, because to be frank, one of the things he said was, hey, the first question I asked was, hey, what's up with the DC job? And then that kind of led into some other stuff. And so the reason it was full circle here. So CJ Christian, the FIU transfer, told me when he came in for his visit on Friday, when, by the way, most of the players had already left for their 2 days off, and most of a couple of coaches had apparently taken off. And one of them was Vinnie Sunseri. And at that moment, I was like, okay, interesting. Okay, now keep in mind, this is before the Sun Bowl that I knew this. So it's like, okay. Like, there's something going on here, but, much like Steve coaching in the game, Vinny was going to coach the game regardless. Now it brings full circle. You go after the game. Okay. This is where we were both caught off guard. I wouldn't have picked Jacksonville State. Now, once you do 30 seconds of research and see who their new coach is, Charles Kelly, who was the former defensive coordinator at Colorado under Coach Prime, who worked with Sal Sunseri, Vinny's father. Now going to UCLA, got to have one kid on the East Coast. Sal just dominating the football coast to coast here at this point. And so you look at that and think, okay, now that checks out. And because you made a good point to me before we started doing this, where it's kind of surprising that Vinny would get a DC job, but that's why I said it's Jacksonville State. There's a potential, I would bet 70-30 that Charles Kelly will call the plays, if not be heavily, heavily involved in Vinny kind of just understanding the role is called. What I tell you, not that Vinny can't, be a solid coach in his own right, because again, I think this is not a loss, but not a significant loss, but it's a loss. Like, Vinny did well with the safeties this season. You look at the way McCall grew and all these guys grew. So it's a loss, but it's also not one that I was necessarily unexpected to see. I wouldn't have picked Jacksonville State as the destination.
So the thing that I'm glad you said it that way, because the thing that I was most surprised about with all of this was him getting a defensive coordinator job this early on. Let me be very, very clear here. I don't think that it has anything to do with his qualifications. I think he absolutely deserves a shot. As you said, we saw breakouts from Cam Ficulon. We saw Mikel Esteen have a phenomenal season. We saw just how the young guys looked in practice, whether it be Rashawn Clark, Peyton Waters. We've heard glowing reviews from people close to just the team about Vinnie Sunseri as a coach, as a recruiter. Heard glowing reviews from parents on the recruiting trail about what he's able to do. So it's not that he doesn't deserve a shot, but a little extra context into Vinnie Sunseri, his time at Washington as a safeties coach, again, the position he played at Alabama in the NFL, that was his first time as a position coach for the position he played, because he started his career as a GA at Alabama in 2019. Then he was a defensive assistant for the Patriots in 2020. And then he spent the next 3 years with the Patriots coaching running backs. So it's a very interesting rise. And, the way everybody talks about him, is that part of it surprising? Probably not. And it's awesome to see him get that opportunity. We saw Robert Bala give him a shout out on Twitter for all that. But it's very early, and it's, wow, okay, this is a 33-year-old guy in his sixth year coaching, already a defensive coordinator role. That's awesome. You love to see that for him, but it's a little shocking at the same time. And Lars, with that being said, as we really dive into this, you said it's certainly a loss, not a significant one, because it hasn't been finalized, because Steve Belichick is still technically Washington's defensive coordinator until that is made official. I'm just going to point this out. One thing CJ also did tell me is Jedd sounded like he knew Steve was going to go take the UNC job, but that Steve wasn't necessarily like enthralled about. It sounded like a guy that's like, hey, dang, I could do my own thing here, or should I go do this? And it wasn't that he was wavering. I don't want to say that, but it was a hard decision for Steve to make at the end of the day. So it wasn't just a guarantee like, oh, hey, whatever, Jedd, I'm going with my dad. See, I'm just coaching this game and cashing my check. It's like, he actually wanted to stay at Washington. So let's dive into that. Where I say that to say the expected defensive coordinator, who's been reported by all the major outlets, we've talked about it on this show, is Ryan Walters. Ryan Walters came up as a safeties coach. So you could give him the designation of safeties coach if you want to have somebody there as well as defensive coordinator, something to keep an eye on. But this also frees up a spot on the coaching staff for the name that's been thrown out there that was in the running by, I think it was either On 3 or 247, was Drew Wilkins, who's outside linebackers coach with the Patriots as potential edge coach. You bring a name. I throw that name out there just to give an example of, hey, yeah, it's possible you could bring in another guy to coach that position, move Jason Kafusi to the interior of the defensive line, or vice versa, make him the edge coach, bring in an interior guy. Just something to think about there. So that's how that could possibly work out. But another question that I'm sure both you and I were asked, Lars, is the recruiting side of things. I don't know about you, but I'm truly not concerned. I've reached out to some people, in the 26 class to say, hey, how might this affect you? So on and so forth. But in terms of guys that are in the room right now and 25 guys coming in, of which there's only one, and Ryland Dillard Allen, this doesn't affect him at all. And it's because it's not, hey, oh yeah, he's going to take, for example, Peyton Waters or Rashawn Clark with him to Jacksonville State. We know that's not happening, but it just feels like if somebody is going to leave that room in the transfer portal, like we're going to get to with Jordan Shaw in a minute, it's more because of attrition and playing time than it would be because Vinnie Sunseri left.
Tristan Dunn-McCall.
Yeah.
I mean, the guy that would have been in the rotation, the guy that the last two staffs have been like, hey, he's a hard hitter, he's a good dude, and just, okay, Saturday, where's he at? And that's not a shot at Tristan. It was just like one was not equaling, 1 + 1 was not equaling 2 for certain guys, and Keys was kind of that same way where it's, and again, we'll get to it with Jordan Shaw, but it's a lot of these guys where, okay, if one's not entering, now you look at the safety position, you're only bringing in Alex McLaughlin and CJ Christian. And now you think about that. And then the fact, and by the way, CJ only took the visit to Washington. Paperwork's been signed, so he's getting ready to move up to Seattle. So it's not like, oh, hey, now I got to wait and see. So Jedd, I guess I'll just say this. Jedd basically said there's two names. We've talked about two names on this here show, as you like to say.
Yeah.
And so I'm not saying those are the two names that are guaranteed slam dunks, but at the same point, I would imagine Robert Bala for the incredible work he did on the recruiting trail, again, tying this into the recruiting. Jonathan Epperson was a guy who could play Husky line. Donovan Robinson, another guy that Bala and Sunseri were both. And so you look at, that's why when you make some of these kind of outside the box hires, where Drew Wilkins would have been an outside the box hire as a DC, I like him as an edge coach with a track to be a DC, which we talked about off the show, and things like that, where you can see the vision Jedd has, where same thing with Luke Del Rio as an analyst. These guys where it's like they could easily be position coaches, and then you slowly 2, 3, 4 years move up the ranks, and it's exactly what you want. And so Jedd's building out his tree in a way. And I mean, nobody else can really get credit for Vinny aside from Belichick, but I don't think Bill would claim him in terms of his coaching tree.
Sure. Lars, with that being said, we got to switch gears here because Jordan Shaw hit the transfer portal on Wednesday night. which we'll get to right after the message from our good friends over at FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up a W. I love betting on which players will score a touchdown and how many points each team will score. It's thrilling. Not only can you bet on who will win the game, but FanDuel also has bets for which players will score a touchdown, how many points each team will score, and so much more, like some futures bets. I've been talking about this all year. Jaden Daniels for Rookie of the Year, Josh Allen for MVP. Love those ones. You can go check out so many more just like that by just visiting FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. So, Lars, Jordan Shaw hits the transfer portal on Wednesday night, on New Year's Day. And this is somebody who, I don't know if this was a name you and I were expecting to hit the portal, but it opens up a lot of very interesting possibilities. The number one is, there are some reports going around on Thursday that Tacario Davis, shocker, after we talked about him getting a Washington crystal ball and everything, is expected to stay at the college level for his senior season. He's got the crystal ball to Washington. Maybe not the most shocking thing in the world, but I think it goes beyond that, and it could say something about Thaddeus Dixon's future. I'm not 100% convinced of that, but we might as well have that conversation.
Yeah, it's a good conversation to have. It's a good problem to be in. Again, Tacario, where else is he going? Unless I feel like if there was an anonymous second or third school, we would have heard about it by now. And because he hasn't taken any visits anywhere, that's been reported.
I'm sorry, because that did come out hour or two ago that other schools are getting in the mix, but it's one of the things where you read all the tea leaves and you say right now it's Washington, and then there are other schools. So that's one of the things where I'm curious about how that's going to play out, but you and I have a good idea of how these things usually go.
Exactly. Well, and it's a matter of just, I understand, and you're always usually the one to say, we don't want to talk about names or speculate on names, and it's not necessarily speculation. It's just, anybody with an untrained eye can look at the roster and say, okay, look at the number of X players here, where you had Leroy Bryant, Caleb Presley, Jordan Shaw, plus the incoming freshman Darian Clemens, Ramon Adams. There's one I kind of threw Jonathan Epperson in that mix as that Husky. You could Dylan Robinson as well. Throw him kind of. I don't know, because I think Dylan Robinson outside more, but certainly could dominate in the nickel with that size. Oh my God! But with that being said, it's like you look at that depth and you're going to play the young guys, because if you're a freshman and you don't play, maybe you want to transfer, especially if you're a 4-star. We see that all the time with plenty of schools, and so at some point, somebody's got to leave that room. And you can look at the guys. Tristan Dunn left at safety, so you look at the nickel position. Jordan Shaw had over 500 snaps, I think over 400 at nickel. It was a massive gap between him and Dyson McCutcheon for the second. Dyson had 173. Cam Fab had 153, or one somewhere below Dyson McCutcheon. And then after that, it was a bunch of 90s and 80s and guys kind of just mixing in there, which will be, your Leroy Bryant's, potentially Caleb Presley's, Rashawn Clark's, if you will. And so there's so many young guys on that list. You have to, somebody's got to bounce out. And then you think, as I wrote on Athlon Sports, and I'm sure you wrote on Huskies Wire, whether it's UNC, whether it's any other school, considering he came from Indiana to go to Arizona with Jedd, then pivoted up to Washington when Jedd went to UW. Steve could be a selling point. I don't think he would go to Jacksonville State. I don't see that one necessarily connecting. PFF did credit him with some starts and some playing time at strong safety, so you do with that what you will. But I don't necessarily see that one connecting, especially going from Indiana to Washington. But no, I'm just clarifying, because again, people think, what about Vinnie? But I would say maybe UNC. I know Kamori House said, hey, come slide in, and nobody can, by the way, nobody should blame Jordan Shaw, because again, just like Jabbar Muhammad, everybody wants to claim about Jabbar. He went to Oklahoma State first. There's only so many guys that you can claim. But
I like where you're going with this. I thought about this in a completely different light, where I'm glad you mentioned guys like Caleb Presley, Leroy Bryant, Dyson McCutcheon, where, keep in mind, Leroy Bryant started not the Sugar Bowl. It's on in the background for me right now as we record this. He started the Sun Bowl, and that's something that should be noted, where we've seen him in practice play on the inside and on the outside. So if that's a guy who you want to shift inside, I wouldn't be surprised. But I want to take it a step further. where I mentioned Thaddeus Dixon. If he does decide that he wants to come back, I don't know if he's necessarily a perfect nickel fit, but I think in Ryan Walters' scheme, he might be. And it's going to take me to my real, just kind of out of left field pitch that I'm going to get to, that I'm personally really excited about. I feel like a couple of everydayers might be as well. So you just got to bear with me here for a minute. Where right now, let's say Tacario Davis does come in and Thaddeus Dixon wants to come back. All of a sudden, you have a really big, long, physical, strong secondary between Tacario and Ephesians on the outside, because you're not moving Tacario or Prysock to the nickel. You're not doing that. So that would, just by process of elimination, be Thaddeus Dixon if he wants to come back. So I think that's a really interesting thing to consider, because we've seen Dyson McCutcheon move all over the place. We've watched him do that. And Leroy Bryant could do it. Caleb Presley could do it, sure, and I think we're going to see that, but this is something that I kind of look at down the line, and somebody who you and I have discussed as being very, very high on, and Matt Doherty said that, before he left, Vinnie Sunseri and Robert Bala were fighting over this guy. That's Donovan Robinson. And I think about this defensive scheme that Ryan Walters is going to implement, where it's 5 down linemen. It's going to be very aggressive. It's going to be very physical. You're going to leave a lot of guys out there on islands. And in certain personnel packages, why not let that nickel player be Donovan Robinson, who you can't figure out if he's going to play linebacker or play safety? Don't make him choose. Just do the Belichick thing and just say, we're going to fit you into the defense in a way that fits you best. And that's just something I wanted to throw out there, where I don't necessarily think it's very possible that it's going to happen, but it's just something that I think people should think about. Is Jordan Shaw's biggest weakness, and I was a huge fan of him as a player. I was really, really impressed with him in the spring and in the fall, where, Lars, the more you and I watched him, the more we were like, that guy's going to start at nickel. It's going to be that guy. But I think about this in a similar light to, and just another reason I bring up Donovan Robinson, in a similar light to what Jedd Fisch said about Isaiah Ward a month or two ago, that we discussed very recently on the show, which was Isaiah Ward was not built to stop the run. That's just not his strength. That's not his skill set. That's not what he's here to do. And with all due respect to Jordan Shaw, that's how I feel about him right now. He's a good tackler, but the physicality aspect of what he brings to the table was not there yet. And that was something that might have, taken a little bit of patience, where the coaching staff might have sat him down and said, hey, we really like you. We think you're really talented, but you're going to have to battle for your spot, because we're bringing in this guy who we think we can stop the run. Alex McLaughlin, another fantastic example, where I think that's the most likely option. Wanted to make sure I get that name out there as well, where that's a dude who can tackle with the best of them. Again, 167 tackles during his time at Northern Arizona. So just another name to keep in mind for that spot. So if it comes down to the physicality in the run game, if you watch CJ Christian, if you watch Alex McLaughlin, Donovan Robinson, some of these other guys, they're just a little bit, I don't want to say more willing, but a little bit, it's more in their skill set to play downhill against the run compared to where Jordan Shaw is. And again, I think he's a fantastic cover corner. We saw him do a really good job in this scheme, but that's just something I wanted to get out there. Was there are a lot of different options in terms of a better adjustment for the Big Ten is probably the best way to say it.
Yeah, well, and it's funny, as you were thinking about, as you were talking, what play flashed into my head? Thaddeus Dixon cutting in for that tackle for loss on the running back. That's a perfect angle to where, kick him over to nickel him, see what happens. And now, by the way, if anything, that only grows his stock in the NFL, because a lot of guys, Devin Witherspoon was a prime guy that you could go outside or inside. And I think as you're seeing in the NFL, cornerbacks as an absolute weapon can be used in multitudes of ways. You not necessarily might have him lined out as a far side if you're going to blitz him, but you can have him primarily on the outside. If you need to kick him in a nickel, let him do it. And that play really, I think, kind of laid the seed, if you will, to say, you know what? I could see that a nickel, and that would work, and that would also make sense. That's a solid justification, give you 12, 13, 14, potentially, depending on how many games you want to get to next season, at nickel, on top of the 2 solid years you've had at UW at cornerback. That's 3 solid years worth of NFL tape, guaranteed day 2 pick, if not earlier.
So I like where you're going with that. Let's be clear. I'm personally still in the mindset. I just want to make sure we end on this, that Thad will end up going to the NFL. Yeah. It just feels like where his mindset is right now. And if he does, that's okay. That's why we want to throw out all those other options with, again, Alex McLaughlin being the one that makes the most sense. But we got to have some fun on here and shake things up and talk about a whole bunch of different guys. So that's the most likely option. But Thad playing that nickel role for a year would be really intriguing, a lot of fun, and would go a long way towards stopping the run as well. But Lars, let's jump to some other guys that we were really impressed with in the Sun Bowl. Right after a message from our friends over at Rocket Money. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? That definitely happened to me. I had a few subscriptions that I didn't even realize I was still paying for, and Rocket Money made it so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals that you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. For me, one of the best features is the subscription tracker. I've used to cancel services I wasn't using anymore, and I've already saved a ton. Plus, with their goals feature, I've been able to automatically set aside money for my future. No more stressing about budgeting every month. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. One more time, that's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Lars, we got a couple of comments saying we didn't give enough love to Giles Jackson in our post-game show for the Sugar Bowl. So I kind of just want to hand that off to you as the number one Giles Jackson fan. But yeah, we wanted to get to other standouts in the Sun Bowl. I've got a couple of fun ones. Let's start there.
Yeah, the man who was robbed of a potential game winner against Wazoo, the man who was robbed last season of being able to truly participate in a national championship run because he did a solid to a coaching staff that ended up leaving. And you know what's great? And what's great about Giles and why I always connected with him, just going back to his days in Michigan and then when he entered the portal initially or whatever that was back in the day. I don't know if the portal was actually the portal or if it was just kind of like a waiver. You just got to put a piece of paper in the air and say, hey, yeah. I'm here. I got a ticket. I'm trying to go somewhere. But when Giles said after the game that, be patient, what's your message, to kind of, the fans, the younger guys, what do you think is next for the Washington program? And it's like, just be patient. When I came into college, I thought I was going to be the guy, a 4-star coming out of Antioch and just, ready to light the world on fire in Michigan. And it doesn't necessarily come to fruition. And there's, one can say there's more viral moments of him engaging with fans at Michigan than there are him making plays at Michigan. And, as I say that, as you mentioned, as the number one Giles Jackson fan. So knowing what he had to go through last season, knowing he probably could have played at the end of last season, if we're being completely honest, but, just had to redshirt so he could get this year. And it's like, what better way to have a career high in catches, yards, and touchdowns and lay the foundation for the next quarterback to say, you know what, I'm going to help this young guy out and he's going to help me out because I put in my time. I've waited my time. It didn't feel, because here's the thing, all those passes, Giles was open on every one. I will say the first and the third, I think,
the first one was a little underthrown by DeMond on the 41-yarder, and he made a fantastic play to come back on it. But it's still just it brings me to just how excited I am about DeMond and his arm talent, and it's not just the athleticism; he's got some zip on the ball, man. Sorry, no, please continue.
No, it's like I told when his dad was at practice, and I told you it's Kyler Murray and meets Russell Wilson, deep ball Russell Wilson with some zip of Kyler, because Russell doesn't have the zip. So, first guy I want to talk about is one of those young guys, and that's Paki Finau. Where Lars Paki Finau played 42 snaps in the Sun Bowl, and when we were talking about it leading up to the game, we said, hey, keep an eye on some of these young guys that might get in there. Where this certainly seems like partially because Gard Memolar transferred to Central Florida, but it still fits the agenda, so we have to talk about it. He also finished with the highest grade of any offensive from PFF of any Washington offensive lineman in that game with the 69. It was a very nice game for him, and moving forward, it's something where it goes back to the conversation we had yesterday, where I've had some friends reach out after they listened to our Thursday show and said, hey, I still think that Washington needs to go out and grab another offensive lineman. And you and I both agree.
But we wanted to make sure that we brought up all the possible scenarios that could happen over the next couple of weeks, next couple of months, leading up to spring practice. And I think Paki Finau is at the center of all those plans along the offensive line, because we have said it before, and we're going to say it again, because we cannot stress this enough. Every time you talk to anybody in or around the program about Paki Finau, they cannot help but contain how excited they are for what this kid's future is and what his ceiling is. And it's something where the more that I think about it, the more I say, why are they not going to give him an opportunity? Where if you're going to go out and bring in another guy, a DJ Wingfield, as you said, or Zy Chrysler, somebody that I brought up, where you can still go do that. And then if Paki wins, you can find a way to shuffle the offensive line around to make it work, because we saw that happen last year with Parker Brailsford, where he straight up won the job at right guard before the injuries and everything happened, and he slid over to center. So there are ways to make it work, but I say all that to say I'm very excited about what Paki's upside is, and he showed it in the Sun Bowl.
So Paki is why you brought Guerin back, or why Guerin came back. The right side needs to still be addressed, and that's where the DJ Wingfield comes into play. That's where, because right now, who would you put at right guard? Yeah, who would you put at right guard right now?
Right now, it'd be Guerin Hatchett.
Okay. So no, but I was saying, so if you take Guerin out of the equation, who would your second option be?
It'd probably be Michael Watkins.
And see, no, that's what I'm driving at. Is it's like Guerin's a good addition, mainly for that left guard, and he could play some right guard. But again, you really want to reinforce the trenches. If we're talking about looking at David Gustad along the defensive line, my God, I'm not saying I don't think they're going to get David Gustad, but I'm just saying, like, my God, if there's any unit that this team needs to secure after looking at this season, it's offensive line, and it ain't even close. It's offensive. It's offensive tackle. It's offensive guard, and it's center are the first three things on the team. So three positions go to the offensive line. We're going to divide it in three here. That's how pressing it is. And so you have the depth at center with Landon, Michael Watkins, and then you. I'd probably throw Jake Flores in there as your freshman center, scout team center sort of thing. And then you can really put anybody there at that point. But my point in saying all that is to say the right guard is the one where you're looking at, and that's why you want to go address another veteran need, because whether it's also Zach Henning emerging there or Michael Watkins, and I'm just trying to think, maybe, and here's what's crazy, and to bring it back to Paki, when Jedd was asked before they went down to El Paso about the offensive tackle situation, you mentioned Paki, and I'm like, I believe everything coming out of your mouth except for the tackle part.
I disagree with you.
But look.
No. So I.
That's what I'm saying.
No, I get it. I think your thought process is fair, because you want to start him at guard and kick him out to tackle. We've seen that plan work time and time again. But that doesn't mean that this coaching staff isn't going to give him a shot. That's the thing. Where this coaching staff, like taking Carver Willis, is a fantastic addition. Like, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. But maybe that's why we haven't seen them go out and take a second tackle, where it's, hey, we're going to let him play both positions. And if he wins out here, great. If he wins out there, great. We're just going to work him out, because we know this is the short-term plan and that's the long-term plan. And we've seen it before with the staff where they're going to accelerate that plan, whether it's the right thing to do short-term or not, where, you can go back to their time at Arizona and you can find examples of that. But I think that's the most important thing there. There's one more guy I want to mention. I know you've got one or two more as well. The one I wanted to get to was Jordan Washington. He didn't, you're going to look at his stat line and you're going to say, oh yeah, 2 carries for, I think, 3 or 4 yards. So it's nothing to write home in terms of a standout. But every time I watch that kid, man, we've seen him in practice and everything. It's not just the speed. It's the way Jedd utilizes his speed. When he gets that really early carry, and they just made it. They designed it to get him to the outside. The way they pulled the offensive lineman, just the way that play design was, it's going to work. It's going to work at some point this coming fall. We're going to, I guarantee it. I'm saying this on January 2nd. We're going to see that exact same play call this fall with Jordan Washington, and he's going to have like a 60-yard house call, because that's the kind of speed he possesses. And if you're able to fix the offensive line and the blocking in front of him, that's going to be a lot of fun to watch. But Lars, I say all that to just make sure we can get a couple more guys in there. Who else you got?
So be remiss, kind of tying a perfect bow with this. We started with a senior, I'd be remiss. I'd be remiss if we didn't talk about Carson Bruner.
Absolutely. Yep.
Because I wrote on Athlon Sports, 105 total tackles, so top 5 in the Big Ten in tackles in his only season in the Big Ten. Carson Bruner finished, and this is why I wanted to highlight him, because it started in 2021, even though he came in 2020, redshirted Jimmy Lake, all that COVID season didn't really matter. Let's be real. Every year on the team, he finished in the top 5 in tackling as a backup for 4 out of the 5 years that he was there, or 3 out of the 4 years that he was actually taking significant snaps and playing time, even behind Eddie. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, last year, he finished, I think, 2 or 3.
He finished 3rd.
That's right. And it's like, that's without being a starter, and that's behind a couple guys. And then you still have Alfonso in there. And Alfonso also deserves credit because, again, these guys laid the foundation for Zadrius, for Jonathan Everson, for, again, there's probably somebody in the room, Devin Bryant, Hayden Moore, somebody's going to pop off in that room at some point. But you just look at that, and obviously Jacob Manu is not from the area, but just the future kind of long-term of the program, it's in good hands, veteran-wise with Jacob Manu, but having 2 in-state guys handed off to 2 more in-state guys, like, you couldn't build this defense any better if you're Jedd.
That's a fantastic way to put it. One more little stat thrown out by our good buddy Jeff Bechtold and everybody over at Washington's SID department. Carson Bruner is one of 2 players in the Big Ten this year to finish with over 100 tackles and 3 interceptions. The other one is Iowa's Jay Higgins, who, as we know, is an All-American this season. So shout out to Carson for that, and just a great way to go out for him. Lars, as always, thank you so much for being here. Thank you to all everydayers tuning in. We really do appreciate your support. We got so much more fun stuff coming for you throughout the offseason. So please make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcast, whether that's YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music. We're there. We're everywhere. We're updating the channel with new content every single day. So make sure you click that like button, click that little bell so you don't miss when we post a new video. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, drop them right down below in the comment section. And if you're audio only, please leave us 5-star reviews. It does help us out a lot. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll talk to you on Monday.